Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Immutable Mindset. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Web3 with a titan of innovation and media transformation. This man has taken the helm at some of the most impactful digital media platforms, including Wired.com, Periscope, and Medium, shaping the way we consume and interact with content. He's a trailblazer who doesn't just predict the future, he creates it. After spearheading AI content recommendation systems at Twitter, he's now turned his gaze towards the frontier of Web3, founding a disruptive startup, Land Dao, which we're going to get into today. With a vision that extends beyond the hype and speculation, he sees the world where NFTs and real long-term value are going, and where Web3 could be the solution to the misinformation crisis and fake generative AI media. A journalist by trade, an entrepreneur at heart, and a visionary in spirit, he's the kind of thinker who doesn't just ride the wave of the future, but shapes the tide himself. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the dynamic and forward-thinking Evan Hansen.
Hey, well,
welcome to the Immutable Mindset.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I can't complain. I got under promise, over deliver is my usual tactic. So you've blown that up for me, but
that's a sound way to go. And we like to play this. We like to say this thing where I'd be more than happy to be your hype man anytime, Evan. So just let me know, and I write these all day.
All right. You're hired.
Perfect. So, the first thing that we like to do is really, get the audience to know a little bit more about you and kind of your background. I know I dove into a little bit, but I'd love it if you could just start there, dive a little bit into your background in journalism and how you became interested in the Web3 space.
Sure. I've been a tech journalist. I actually started in legal reporting at the American Lawyer. And my beat, as I was in the 1990s, I got put on the internet as a legal beat, which was kind of crazy, trying to figure out even what was ICANN. And there's just before the internet really had become commercially released by the Commerce Department. So in the right place at the right time. And from there, I got just more and more interested in the tech and wound up working for CNET at news.com and running their consumer desk, basically, for consumer electronics, and was recruited by Wired. And Wired was a really interesting period of my life, because it was a place where I sort of really began to realize that you can walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And media is not just about reporting, but it's about using these tools. And you're right in the lap of innovation. You're reporting about all of this stuff. So it makes perfect sense to actually try to find application. And so at Wired, we were able to hire a development team, and we did a lot of really interesting project. It was more project-based as opposed to trying to recast Wired as a platform of some kind. We were still just using kind of a website, but we did do a lot of really fun projects. Won a bunch of awards with the Knight Batten Foundation for Innovation in Journalism. A couple of highlights, I would say, we did a video game to show people how piracy around the Cape Horn worked. Why do these guys get away with these ransoms? And so we just did an economics gamification that got written up by a couple of interesting video game kind of insight, got some interesting coverage at the time. We did a thing about wiki washing, and came up with a tool to allow people to kind of peek into how different corporations were actually behind edits in Wikipedia. It's called wiki washing, and so we had a way to reveal that. Worked with Kevin Poulsen, who's a very well-known investigative journalist, to build basically a WikiLeaks, an open source version of WikiLeaks. It's called Secure Drop. It was written with Aaron Schwartz, was actually the guy who did most of the coding, but we were kind of the umbrella group that led it through. Due to some weird internal Condé Nast politics, New Yorker magazine wound up releasing that tool, and that was shortly before I left the company to join Medium. And it's been a lot of fun. I think at Twitter as well, I was really driving a lot of the technology applications
Evan,
that were going to help us in the curation team. Curation at Twitter
trying to get
is about adding context to conversations, figuring out which verifying information that's trustworthy, that's accurate, and especially around breaking news. We just want to figure out all different ways to automate this. And we're working with OpenAI. It's an interesting conversation to have, because we started working with OpenAI, and I set up a team to develop basically a tweet summarization tool that was being run through GPT-3. A lot of people don't realize this, that ChatGPT kind of came out of nowhere, but in fact, there was a precursors to this going back years, and GPT-3 was actually released
So it's not a Web 3
under an
thing.
API in 2020. And so we started working on tweet contextualization at that point. And we actually built a very workable sports summarization. We could feed a random set of tweets from our trends product to this chat or to GPT-3, and it would come up with a very accurate, reasonable, scannable headline that would explain what was going on. Like Knicks down 3 in the third quarter, which would be the sort of the headline on top of the conversation around the game. That never shipped, which is something that you do find happens a lot when you're in sort of the bleeding edge of things. It's like sometimes you make stuff and it doesn't really get across the line into the final product. So yeah, Twitter, everybody knows the end story there. Like Elon took over, everybody got basic. I learned by finding out my computer didn't turn on one day, as many people discovered. And so I was looking for next chapters, and I've been working for a while on this platform called Factland. It's a misinformation community. It's a group of people who come together to review factual claims, and there's a Web3 component to it. It's in fact, we're building it into a complete end-to-end Web3 experience, which is staking on claims and using the community, the wisdom of crowds to come up with evidence and then have it reviewed by an anonymous random sample jury. We were given a grant from Dfinity, which runs the Internet Computer Foundation, to build it on their platform, which we are doing. And it's fun. It's at a place called, you can reach it at www.factland.org. We're a nonprofit.
Evan,
we're building it a roadmap to drop a token later this year, if all goes well, and have it fully kind of Web3ified.
Nice. As somebody that's worked at Wired, editor at Medium, Twitter, being a veteran journalist, and somebody that was, that you mentioned, you've been at the bleeding edge of tech and innovation, and this is what you reported on. As you've seen the advent of new technologies come in, how has the media landscape changed? Like how have you noticed the media landscape changing with all these new technologies ever since you started in kind of the world of Web 2?
Yeah, well, I think number one is disintermediation, right? I think direct access from the source or the creator and the audience, and that direct connection, and that media companies and that idea of having a big media company in between is less and less relevant. I think it's a tough one because the resources to conduct real investigations often requires sort of a larger institution. Yeah. And you can think about things like legal protections. There's it can be dangerous for individuals to run out there and report hard-hitting news on their own without some kind of insurance policy for libel and so on. These are real risks that people often, I think, soft pedal, but it does happen that these suits are filed from time to time, and so that's the role of a big media company in the past has had some benefits for reporting, obviously, but also I think there's been a lot of truth in this idea that a handful of really excellent journalists basically carry the weight for a lot of fairly not excellent journalists, and that the media companies kind of arbitrage that, right? So you have people who are really more
marketers,
maybe copying other people's content, doing original reporting, not really breaking any news, not really developing great sourcing, but they have easy access to a large pool of content that they can reprocess and reproduce it under the other.
And to bring that,
and that's
just to bring that back to what you were kind of mentioning before, I'm just curious, given what you've just said, with the advent of new technology, ChatGPT, do you see ChatGPT doing what everybody is believing it's going to do in terms of, journalism being one of those professions that it replaces, or is it going to be the virtual assistant to said journalists, making their ability to create more robust content, more robust? Yeah, just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that the ChatGPT doesn't do yet is reporting, and I think
you're talking like human experiences.
Right. Well, you've got to interview people, right? You've got to get the trust. I mean, like really good journalists find people who know things and normally wouldn't say it out loud. And they get them to trust them and get that information brokered to the public in a way that makes the source feel protected and allows the information out and allows it to be verified and to be of a high quality and high trust. And so, yeah, ChatGPT is, I guess, going to be a great reprocessor. All the people who used to do the rewrite, there's a lot of rewrite people. They just take other people's reporting. Take the news of like the Twitter CEO yesterday. Like there's one person who, I think Kara Swisher is the one who kind of speculated early that was going to be this NBCU advertising executive.
Yep, instantly.
And next thing you know, there's 100 articles saying it's this NBC advertising exec. And like the only outlet that I noticed that actually did some actual really real reporting was the Wall Street Journal. I may be wrong about that. Maybe some others did as well, but they actually called people who had some information and they cited unnamed sources, which, some people have their problems with that. But at least it gives you some credibility to think that they actually they went for people who might know the actual answer to this and got them to say something interesting. So I think the people who just rewrite everybody else's stuff are out of a job. I mean, quite frankly, you've got to up your game now in order to deliver something that's like actually valuable. And I think even in the old days of news reporting, the vast majority of the content that you publish every day is regurgitating what you reported yesterday, not what you're reporting today. There are people who tried to build news apps that were like, hey, you know what? Everything's just cut and paste here. So I actually got one paragraph of news and I'm going to, the form factor that I'm being called upon to fit the news to is like, put it in my oldest terminology of like 12 inches of copy on a newspaper. So I got to come up with 12 inches, so I got to.
The only one interesting place in space that I think could be interesting is the prediction factor of AI, and news organizations utilizing that resource or that ability of it to, let me be to have fun with the news. We'll say maybe to reinterpret, maybe not regurgitate, but reinterpret the news, put their spin on it. Yeah. Sure. So yeah. Go ahead.
I do think prediction is going to be super interesting, and what kind of patterns are kind of buried in the data that we as mere mortal humans can't see, that the AI is going to detect. And I mean, every good journalism outfit plays prediction games all the time.
Look at the elections.
Who do we think? What are the top M&A like possibilities this year? And who's next in line for CEO? People are playing those games every day. So I think AI just superpowers.
That's right. No, I think that's interesting. So go ahead, Adam. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's super interesting from like the standpoint of there was an AI created. Are you familiar with a game called Go? It's like okay. Yeah. So there was an AI created a couple years ago. It's the longest game ever played. And it was an AI created specifically to play this game, but it was created in a way that like it had no history of knowledge. It was just as if it was just born and learning from itself. So it taught itself how to play the game. And so when it sat in front of the Grandmaster of Go and it was on the 36th turn, and this AI did a move that no human had ever done in the history of the game, like that just got my mind thinking in terms of how powerful AI can be for us once we get to that place where AI is just training itself without us humans. Disintermediation, right? Like that's a whole nother level of disintermediation.
This is a runaway nightmare scenario of
is this the Ray Kurzweil? Are you scared of the Ray Kurzweil kind of,
Yeah, Ray Kurzweil. Sure. A little caveat though on that Catago is the name of the program that was written.
Yes, that's what it was. Yep.
A lot of the top Go players resigned. They basically quit the game.
The Grandmaster quit right then and there. He left and he never played again.
So there's an interesting caveat to this, which is just this year, Stanford AI team did an adversarial attack on Catago. They were like, we want to see if there's a flaw in the
Yeah.
way that this AI plays the game. And they discovered one, which allowed a very, very simplistic kind of way to beat it every single time. Like a mediocre player on the team who's just kind of a hobbyist, wasn't really a great player, but he utilized this strategy and he beat the AI 9 times out of 10. And it just shows you that we don't really understand how the AI is solving the problems that we put to it. There's a pattern recognition there that is somewhat like unscrutable. And even the people who built it couldn't actually tell you. So for example, when you think about image recognition and say, oh, how does it know it's a cat? Well, a human would say, well, it's got ears, it's got eyes, it's got furry face. And, but the AI might be keying off something completely different. And it may not even have anything that resembles what a human would recognize as a cat-like qualities, but it just happens to appear in all of these cat images. And so it keys off of that and it gets it right. So by changing weird pixels in an image, just like without removing the recognizable image for a human, but just randomly reassembling or removing around some pixels, you can confuse the AI really easily. So it was getting cats 100%, and then you just suck out 30% of the pixels, and suddenly it's calling everything a red truck. And so people don't really understand how the pattern recognition works, how those token predictions for the language models work. It really is, all it's doing is saying that given all the tokens that I have produced so far, this next token is the one that's most likely to fit the bill. And that's literally it. It's like literally just adding like small chunks of letters based on the last chunk of letters. There's no actual understanding of vocabulary or even grammar. So I think that's something that people really don't understand about AI. They're thinking, oh, we're achieving something. They're thinking like people. It's like, no, they actually don't think anything like people at all. And to the point where we don't even know how it gets the success that it does. Super interesting. There's like, I don't know if you saw that thing about the secret language of ChatGPT. Can't remember the name of the language, but somebody prompted it to say, if that it just
created its own language.
Just forget about like producing something that a human would recognize. Just create a prompt that you would use to do this thing. And it used like emojis and like all kinds of weird scrambles of letters and stuff. You couldn't read it. It was just really strange. But when you fed that prompt, it would produce a story, a famous sci-fi story from like, I think it was Cthulhu, some kind of Lovecraft thing.
So anyway, I want to just kind of put a little spin on this one. I'm very curious about it. So there's a lot of talk, and I think a lot of people are wrongly pairing AI and Web3 together just from a time perspective. But as you noted before, and many of us who know, AI has been around for a while. Is this a good thing for the advancement of quote unquote Web3 technology in the masses from a PR standpoint in the media, showing the good of AI, the power that it can do? Or is this going to hurt us in the long run?
For the Web3 community, I think AI is going to be a forcing function for people to actually revisit blockchain and revisit Web3 as a serious and high value utility. And the utility, the obvious one is just verification, provenance. We're going to need to certify pretty much everything that we create from here on in to be able, so people can cryptographically, in a cryptographically secure way, can prove that a particular piece of content was produced by or is sort of vouched for by the persons who claim to have
in the future, all three of us are going to have to sign a digital signature that said we were actually here doing this, and it was us.
Right, Kevin? Is that what's called Slick?
Exactly.
If you think about like stock photos,
identity verification,
stock images, and stock audio and clip art and all that stuff too, the verification and the rights royalty behind it.
Well, even more scary. Now you can get a picture of the president of the United States, and you can have him say a million different things and distribute that. I mean, very soon you could make a million pieces of that content. And how do you, like, it's going to get insanely crazy. It's going to get insanely crazy.
And it's super cheap to make. Super cheap. And the quality of it is off the charts. So you have to like basically assume that everything is fake if you don't already, until someone can prove to you that it isn't. And that's going to count for like everything, even things that the smartest things that people are going to do are not like crazy things like that Biden advertisement, which people looked at and said, this has got to be wrong. But things where you just elide something, just slip something in that makes it slightly different.
With the winter jacket,
and then people would be like, "Well, did he say this or did he say that?" And they're kind of the same, but they're different. They're like meaningfully different. And which is one is the actual thing that was said. I think those type of little subtle things, or maybe make somebody look like they're like having an emotional reaction that they didn't have, but something super subtle. This sort of wholesale, getting Biden to say that, we should declare nuclear war on China. That stuff's not going to, I don't think, fool very many people for very long. But I do think there's way more subtle things that can be done that will actually pollute the pool in ways that you're going to have to actually do real research to figure out what the heck is real. And that's just a huge expense. So there's going to have to be some simpler way for us to be able to look at something and say this is true.
Definitely. Yeah, I think people are forgetting that AI is highly deflationary, and it's going to make the cost of everything go to zero, which is going to make everything very easily producible and replicable. But there's also AI for good. There's also some cool things that are happening right now. Did you hear about the Turbo coin, the NFT artist that? Yes. So
listen.
So for anybody listening at home, there was an NFT artist that essentially used ChatGPT and a $60 budget to create a smart contract, to create a coin. He did it through the community, and then it's out there in the open. You can buy it now. I just thought it was, he went through the whole process. He posted the whole process. It was community oriented. I thought it was a really, really cool way. I mean, again, for right now, I understand, but I just thought it was a really cool way to utilize AI and NFTs and really bridge that gap. Just, curious on your thoughts on what you heard about that.
Yeah, well, I think that, we're in meme coin, shit coin, like max, it's like that BRC20.
Sorry, Bitcoiners.
Somebody said you can
Kevin showed it to me.
Posted a how to.
Kevin showed it to me last week when I was talking about
27 seconds. I can create it.
Out. I mean, you have to know how to do the back ends.
27 seconds. It's just plug and play. You just click, and done. You have a new coin.
Yeah. So I mean, what's that all mean, right? I mean, I do kind of believe that all shit coins go to zero.
They do.
That it's really just a game of when you get out, and so it's musical chairs. And somebody's going to get left holding the bag on that stuff. Even SHIB is going to probably, even with Musk pushing it, probably there's no intrinsic value. It's a pure speculative thing, right? It's just a lottery ticket. So, but in this particular case, I thought it was super interesting because of and this is one of the things I find most appealing about Web3 and positive about Web3. This guy's a longtime digital artist. He's been doing this stuff for a long, long time. And he has developed a real and genuine audience, a real community. And so what he got going, it's like anybody can issue one of these coins, but the whole thing is finding an engaged audience who are actually going to interact with it. We're going to use it. We're going to help you shill it. And if you can't get that 0 to 1, you can make all the shit coins you want. They're not going anywhere. So everybody's trying to figure this out, even in the NFT world of fine art. If you can't get an engaged community to buy into your project in the water, right? So simple to put these things together from a technical point of view. It's very, very hard to build the trust in the project, the people who are pushing it, and all of that other good stuff. So
trust.
I thought what's super interesting about Turbo was this guy was able. I guess he launched it and he got crickets. I mean, he only got 50 people to sign on to the initial ICO.
That's right.
But then it somehow hit a vector. Somebody talked about it. He got a whale or somebody to vouch for it, and
people,
boom, hockey.
People created a big old NFT about Turbo, and it went crazy after that. It went viral.
People, okay, yeah. So yeah, he got a real OG, somebody who's got the social credit,
and that's why I thought it was really interesting because exactly as you said, you nailed it on the head. He already had an existing audience that he curated and crafted. He's already an artist. This isn't some degen,
he's the highest seller,
bullshit developer that has no clout, has no. He was at Sotheby's, he was at Christie's. He has a lot of. There you go. So he had a lot of that, the infrastructure, you could say, but for all the other ones, when it comes to AI and all this, we're talking, back to misinformation, back to, figuring out a way to identify, authorize, authenticate. Land Dao. What are you guys doing over there in terms of combating misinformation, and how does that play a role in everything we're talking about here?
Yeah, so we may be a little behind because we were building this before the big AI explosion. We'll probably have to figure out what's our AI strategy. But we saw an opportunity for a real blockchain utility that very often people are bolting on, or they're trying to figure out what's it good for. Like, you often hear this argument that, decentralized ledgers are they don't do anything new. In fact, they just do something that's very old, and they do it in a worse way that doesn't scale well, and there's no real reason for it unless you want to do something permissionless. And the only people who want to do anything permissionless are criminals or people up to bad shit.
And that's what I would call misinformation.
That's true, but I'm trying to, that's sort of this sort of steel man the other side of this thing a little bit. And so at Factland, I actually started a conversation with David Chom, and he's a very OG digital currency guy. He's building his own network called XX, and we were planning to help build it onto XX. Turned out XX wasn't ready for it, so we kind of pivoted onto Internet Computer. But the kind of core idea kind of came out of conversations with him, and the idea is basically problem with verification and misinformation. There's a million places that do fact checking. There's a million places that if you trust them, you're going to get pretty good information. Like, I don't know, Bellingcat, right? And the whole OS Intel world. These guys have solved some incredible things using open source information, like videos on YouTube, and they can geotag it, very credible techniques. And it's pretty wild. They proved that the Russian rocket launcher took down the N117 flight. And you can actually see the pictures of the actual rocket launcher in different places on a train bed and in a field, and there's two rockets on it, and then there's one, and then they get this stuff from satellite imagery and stuff. It's crazy. But there's a whole narrative about Bellingcat that's emerged, which is, Bellingcat's funded by the U.S. government. They got a grant, undisclosed amount. It's the only undisclosed amount ever issued by this U.S. government organization. It's a what do you call it, an NGO, so it's not officially government, but it's actually Congress dictates its budget and has a say over what it's a very strange group. And a lot of people see it as kind of like Voice of America. They're helping democracy in places like Iran and things like that. So a lot of people just think it's cut out for the CIA. Right?
Yes.
And so now the minute Bellingcat says anything now, there's a whole pile of people. Oh yeah, but Bellingcat's they're just a front for the CIA. There's no evidence that that's the case, but people can build these fantasies, right?
Yeah.
So, but the source is a problem.
Yeah.
And it's a problem in journalism as well. I mean, people have done these studies on trustworthiness and credibility in news, and telling people the source of news actually hurts your ability to tell whether it's true or not. So if you're a fan of the New York Times, you're more likely to believe an article that they wrote that was wrong, and vice versa. If you hate Fox, you're more likely to disbelieve an article even when it's true. So the effect of telling people the source is to just create a bias. It creates a reinforcement bias, and then you get more things wrong. So that's kind of wild psychology, but it's apparently well documented in the literature. So we were thinking, well, what if you remove the source? And you say, there is no source. The source is the community. This is a group decision. And who specifically said it? Well, we're going to keep those people anonymous. So we're going to do a random selection of people from a representative sample of a large community. That's going to deliver the verdict on whether something's true or false. And that actually gets you to a place where people are upset with that. You say, well, if you don't like the decisions, join. You can have a say. You're not being iced out. No, come on in. You can even submit your own evidence. You can stake is another big component of this. It's we allow people to bet on.
That's how you're empowering folks in the community.
Yeah, so that creates an incentive system and rewards. And when we actually drop a token, that would actually be worth something. So people get paid. And I'm thinking, well, if people get paid, then maybe you recruit a real random sample, which would be students, people who need just low touch sources of income, and reviewing and signing off on misinformation investigations could be something you do in your spare time for an hour a day or less or more. Or retirees could get involved with that. There's a whole slew of people who are in the gig economy, driving Lyft and things like that, who could be recruited in to say, well, you want to make a little bit of money for very low touch. This is just, you come in when you want. There's nobody overseeing you. You do what you want. There's no punishment if you do something wrong. I mean, maybe we'll do a reputation system at some point so that we could wean out sort of trolls and people who are malicious. But the idea is that it's a permissionless and completely decentralized system. So the decisions that have come out of it are you got a shadow box. I mean, there's no actual source to come from. So that's our goal, is to create something that has not just the verification layer, but the consensus layer. And we're thinking, what's the psychology of consensus? And it's really about inclusion. It's about adversarial systems, letting people dispute with each other openly, participation. Those are the kinds of things that get people to like lower their resistance to new ideas. If they participate in the debate, if they're allowed to put out so-called unorthodox opinions and have them heard and listened to, that actually, it achieves the goal of getting you closer to a place where people might want to change their mind. I think that's the biggest problem we face with this stuff. It's less about the facts. It's about the people have hardened their positions so strongly, and they're so tied to politically posed groups. Right? If you believe X, like you believe in masking, well, that's because you're a Democrat. And people just skate right past the science. Right?
Are you noticing that natural bias within the community as you're empowering them to report in these ways and they report back to you? Is that showing up, or what challenges have you faced in terms of that?
We're actually, our biggest challenge is just participation.
Okay.
Not enough people know about it, and we don't. We kind of built it as a Web 2 demonstration. We wanted to figure out, does the whole system work end to end? And can you file a claim and can you stake on it? But we're not really Web 3 at the moment. People give us their email address and they sign up, Web 2 kind of way. We do have an integration with Internet Identity, which is the Internet Computer version of kind of wallet login. But there's only a smattering of like actual blockchain integrations that are actually functioning. We do store all the jury verdicts on the Internet Computer. It's verifiable. Anybody can download the data, check on it, and verify that it hasn't been tampered with. And these things, when we were thinking about why blockchain, these were sort of fundamental considerations. It was, well, blockchain gives you something where anyone can go and check, right? Anyone. And so people underestimate that. I was talking to some VCs about it, and they were, well, why does anybody need that? And I'm like, well, because like they'll just trust you, right? And I'm like, well, no, I don't want people to trust me. I want them to like have the ability to like independently verify all of this stuff and come up with their own conclusion and not be told it's the right way because somebody said so.
Evan, I wanted to get your take, since you kind of brought it up, and I'm just a curious human being. I'm curious about something. Web3 and just the space in general, blockchain technology. It feels like it has become pretty political. Especially in the media. The media landscape. It really feels like the right likes crypto and the left doesn't, and that's kind of like the narrative that plays out. I know there's the libertarian aspect of it. I get that, but I'm just curious as to how you've seen this space develop, how you've seen the media portray this space, and just curious about your thoughts on that, just the political leanings of crypto and blockchain. Yeah,
well, I can just tell from anecdotally, because I know a lot of journalists and I've shopped fact land around to a lot of them, and the very kind of, I would say, the consensus view is that they don't think it's a good idea to pursue this. So they like other models of verification, which put journalists in charge of the process, right? So that you can understand why there's a little bit of competition there. So I do think more broadly, we can see it in the regulatory stance in the US in particular, where there's just a large group of people in power who, for whatever reason, feel that stuff is threatening and they want to stop it. And I unfortunately feel like that could become the reality for.
I mean, how big of a point is this going to be in the elections?
US, it's just
right? Like, how big of a point is this going to be a major issue in the upcoming elections?
What's that? No.
Well, not to cut you off there.
Warren tried to do something like anti-crypto army or whatever. And I think like 4 people showed up. I mean, I just don't think it's a plank for most people. I think you remember, like, blockchain is, for aficionados, it's very hard to remember that your vanguard, a very tiny vanguard, in all things considered, like 99% of people don't even understand wallets or anything to do with blockchain or Bitcoin, and they conflate a lot of things. Blockchain is cryptocurrency, and that's it, right? A huge misunderstanding, I think, generally about the technology. So I just don't see how a politician is going to mobilize a large group of people to like make a difference in the election over blockchain.
Agreed.
Just like the banks go up and blockchain turns out to be right.
Agreed. Totally agree with you. How do you, given our conversation here, how do you envision the future of media and entertainment, with the continued advancement of Web3 technologies, AI? do you have a vision for how this is going to play out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I do. And I've said Meteor was going to be it. I mean, it's like my tagline for Meteor was make it with AI, sell it with Web3.
Ooh, I like that.
Web3 is ownership. It's when artists, creators actually get control back of their value of the work they create. I mean, look at the script writers strike in Hollywood. I mean, it's like this stuff is still on a level of like just the relationship between the people with capital in entertainment and the people who actually produce things that people want to consume. It's just absolutely, it's nonsensical. And it's got to end. And we see a way out with Web3. I think the idea that you can get like forward sale royalties is super interesting and compelling. It doesn't always get respected. I think that's a matter because people still don't want to do like L1 smart contracts because they're really expensive. But then you have to get compliance through like voluntary compliance with people who are the smart contract doesn't enforce it itself, right? So we need to get more. That's actually a big miss by the Web3 community as a whole. Speculators are winning, and the artists are getting left behind. So whatever benefits people who want to flip, like Blur, and those type of operations, where it's really geared towards people who are just purely speculating in the asset and not really necessarily want to hold it or like support an artist. They're just like Pepe coin. I'm going to cash in on that if I can.
Right.
And I think that's bad for the overall thing. It's not, everybody's not going that way. I bought a fractional of that Warhol, which Freeport put out the other day. And there are people who are trying to do some really innovative things around how do you digitize real world assets, and how do you bring NFTs into spaces like real estate and even
tokenize the world,
like trade and like inventory control. And the EU wants to have like digital labeling, like verifiable digital labeling on every product, similar to like ingredients lists and stuff like that. And but that's like a ready-made kind of use case for like blockchain. Once you get that stuff in a blockchain, the rails are just that much more efficient, like making sure that everybody can cradle to grave a product and know where it was in each step of the way and how it got disposed of and all of that other stuff. It's an underappreciated kind of use case, but I think it's going to kind of come and most people aren't even looking in that place. If you want to learn more about that, talk to guys like Vinay Gupta. He's one of the Ethereum OG guys who helped set up the initial Ethereum launch and mainnet. He also runs a company now called Meteor, and he's got a lot of interesting things to say about real world assets, which is what he's working on. He actually has a property for sale. I think, nice. I'm not sure if it's sold yet, but his company is the back end for NFT real estate, some mansion on the ocean in like England up for sale.
And final question for you here, Evan, what's next on the horizon for you? Can you give us a sneak peek into, do you have any upcoming projects or initiatives, anything you're looking at, anything you're excited about?
Well, Backland is my gig right now. We're pushing to get a second round grant from Definity and trying to raise some more money for it. Once we get that going, we're going to be able to move. Right now, if you go to demo.factland.org, you can see our kind of Web 2.5 version. My goal is by this year, we're going to have it fully Web 3ified. Nice. We're going to remove the demo from factland.org and have a token and get all the sort of the incentives rolling and start to actively go to market, do some airdrops and try to get people excited about it. That's my main gig for now. In terms of what else I'm excited about, I am excited about Freeport. I think Freeport's a super interesting company that's doing some interesting stuff. They've got fully SEC.
Can you tell our audience what Freeport is? Yeah,
Freeport is they're an art house that's like, they're digitizing real world art assets. Like their first one is a series of Warhol prints. And what they've done is it's kind of a weird, it's not really an NFT. It's a different type of securitization, but it behaves a lot like an NFT. The point being, you can own a.
But how are they verifying ownership? But how are they verifying ownership?
Like Masterworks.
Actual authentic.
They have the ownership and they put it into a vault, so they have physical possession of these prints. And that part of their business model is that they actually plan to create galleries and places where people can visit and see these things. You could maybe create a metaverse version of that, where you can visit your digital art in like a a virtual space, but you own a piece of it. It's a piece you can sell.
Fractionalized.
And so, most people can't afford a Warhol. It's like those things, like the record-breaking 40 million. But art has outperformed
every asset,
S&P 500 by a factor of like 10 over the last like 20 years. So it's a way for people to diversify, and also it's completely depegged from like it does not move in lockstep with the stock market. So if you want to diversify your asset mix, art is actually a really good one. And rich people have figured that out a long time ago. Now it's available for people. I mean, it costs about $1,000 to get in on a piece of.
It's been a great conversation, Kevin.
Some of them I think you could get for $250.
Art, gold, and Bitcoin. That's the way to diversify. That's right. But that's just me. I'm a degen.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Evan. That is a wrap on our show. If you could please do us a huge favor and let the people know where to find you on socials and any well, we already talked about the stuff you're working on with Land Dao. But yeah, please let the people know where to find you on social. Sure.
I'm at Evan, EVN, HSN on Twitter. That's kind of my main hangout.
Awesome.
I'm on Blue Sky as well. And I got an Orb account, but I don't remember what those handles are off the top. Probably it's the same at EVN HSN.
At EVN HSN. Thank you so much.
Warpcast is actually a very cool decentralized social network as well.
Yes, and Blue Sky is up and coming. I'm excited to see where that goes. So 100%. To everyone listening at home,
thanks for having me, guys.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Please follow us on all social media channels at Immutable Show. Subscribe, comment, network. Thank you for joining us again, Evan. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.